What's up, everybody? It's Jasmine with the New Black Collective.
And what's up, y'all? It's De'Viar with Black Scent.
And you are now tuned into Stories of the Streets. Stories of the Streets is powered by Rogue Media Network in collaboration with Change Waco, the New Black Collective, and Black Scent.
Today we have a super special guest. Yesterday, July 31st, was our 1-year anniversary, but today we're doing it a little different. We're having a live episode with the police chief, the new police chief of Waco, Miss Cheryl Victorian.
Thank you. Yeah, Cheryl Victorian. Thank you for having me, and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We are excited to have you. So we did this episode a little different. We got crowd questions. We normally just kind of go off the top of our head, but we wanted to have a good conversation and an open conversation with the community. We had some questions that people submitted to our Instagram, our Facebook, or our personal inboxes or text messages. Okay. So we just have those questions that were submitted to us, and I believe you've already received some of them. Yeah. There are a few that came in kind of last minute, but we'll just go ahead and get started with what we already know that you've seen before.
Okay, that's fine.
Is there any way the nonprofits here in Waco could help with a cite and divert or cite and release ordinance? The people of Waco want to see a drastic drop in the number of low-level crime arrests.
So cite and release program is actually an excellent program, and there are different stakeholders that you have to get involved in order for it to function correctly, including the district attorney's office, the judges, and of course the police department. And we have to get our city government on board as well. We did implement a cite and release program in Houston, so it is something that I support. But yeah, so we have to make sure that the other stakeholders are on board with, beginning a cite and release program. And there are only certain offenses. These are non-violent offenses that are eligible for cite and release, such as petty theft, criminal mischief, low-level marijuana possession, like 4 ounces or below, if you're not already participating in the program. So there are programs that are already working effectively that could be implemented, but yes, we just have to get buy-in from all the stakeholders.
Gotcha. How long? You're from Houston, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I love Houston so much.
Yeah, I've been there all my life until now.
Yeah. Welcome to Waco.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question says, Waco was seeking a $1.5 million grant to help hire new police officers. Did the city ever receive the money, and is it just going to be used to hire new police officers?
We have not received a $1.6 million grant. I think this person is confusing this with the Department of Justice grant that we applied for to supplement the number of police officers that we have on the street. And what that is a program where we requested police officers from the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice will pay 75% of those officers' salary for the first 3 years that they're hired, including they give us like a 1 year to hire and train, and then for 3 years they'll pay 75% of the salary. The city would have to pay 25% of the salary, but after that the city has to pay the entire salary. So the $1.6 million comes in after that 4 years to pay the officers' salaries that were hired from that program.
Gotcha.
So, and we have not been approved yet. They kept extending the grant. They finally closed it again, I think this past Friday, and they're supposed to make announcements on September the 1st. So we'll know if we would get those positions and eventually get that funding added to our budget in 4 years after that point.
Gotcha. Okay, I have a question that's kind of random to piggyback off of that. With those officers being hired, what does that look like for the city of Waco?
So our evening shift suffers a lot with responding to calls for service. That's where we have the most calls for service. That's when the most incidents occur, most violent incidents occur. And so that's where we would like to beef up that unit on evening shift that works from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 1 o'clock in the morning. So that it just more officers on the street to be proactive in addressing crimes and responding to crime, and hopefully reduce the fear of crime because we're able to be visible and hopefully catch things before it actually happens.
Gotcha.
Oh, this is one of my favorite questions. How do you stay true to yourself in such a conflicting profession, given everything that's been going on in recent years?
So when I first became a police officer, I never imagined we would be where we are today. I knew that there were some issues generationally with people of color, Black and brown people. But when I joined the police department, of course, I wanted to put the bad guy in jail. That was my priority. Got to put the bad guy in jail. But then, too, I wanted to demonstrate that police officers can take this job to be public servants and do the right thing. And then over the course of the past 10 years or so, things have started to change, and it's become, a different profession. But I look at it not as challenges, but as a leader now, as an opportunity. We still have a lot of work to do. Every time we feel like we're taking 10 steps ahead, we get pushed back 11. When one incident happens, I don't care what part of the country it's in. So, I feel like I'm being true to myself by managing the primary commitment that I made when I first became a police officer, and that was to make a difference, whether it was putting a bad guy in jail or connecting with the community. And now one of my priorities as a leader, I realized that a long time ago, after I started promoting, that we couldn't arrest our way out of everything, and that we needed to be guardians just as much as we needed to be warriors. So one of my main priorities is to increase the number of positive interactions that we have with our communities, specifically communities of African Americans and brown people, or Hispanic or Mexican Americans. I shouldn't say that.
No, I got you. Like it's kind of like hard, kind of say, yeah. But no, I appreciate that. I love the whole, got to be guardians as much as warriors. That is super powerful. Vanessa, that's one maybe too.
Yeah, okay. So this is a Change Waco question. So in some of our Change Waco Zoom calls, there was mention of setting up initiatives that would get people with mental health issues professional help rather than jail time. Is that something you or the city is pursuing? And is there any way the nonprofits of the city can help?
It would be really, really helpful if we had a mental health diversion program, or large enough organizations and the money to put social workers in the cars with our police officers, because a lot of times most times they are better equipped at handling our mental health calls. We receive training, crisis intervention training, but we're not social workers, and that's not our specialty. So I would love to see us one day in the future have social workers in our patrol cars with our officers, and when we have calls, mental health calls, to have them dispatched as well. If it's a nonviolent call, to have them dispatched as well, and to find somewhere. And our officers do a lot of emergency detention orders. Everybody that we get a call to for mental health issues do not go to jail. A lot of them go to the hospital, rightfully so. But if they're not violent and have committed a crime, we don't have another option. And so we have to figure out what that option is going to be, and have a facility or something where we can divert them to, as opposed to putting them in jail. And it's a lot bigger issue than that, because these people need help. Our mental health consumers, they need help. And, they may go and get an emergency detention order today, and in 24 hours, they're back out. And if they're having a mental issue, a mental crisis, they're going to continue to, be a part of that system. So we need to come up with some more permanent solutions, and just work together to maybe create a diversion program for those that are committing nonviolent offenses until we can get them the help that they need and get them on the track to, whether they're taking their medicine or getting them a job or whatever. But one thing that I do want to say, that we're working with Waco Connect, and we're hiring one social worker to work with our CCAS unit, which is our criminal apprehension and supervision team. And we'll have somebody on that unit, because that unit initially was supposed to go after those guys, the bad guys with the warrants and stuff. And we found ourselves, and they were supposed to go after the ones who were committing most of the crimes most of the time. And what we found was that most of those people were people with mental illnesses. So that's where they've been focusing their time. And we've been fortunate enough to be approved to have a social worker to work with that group, not go out in the car and be on the patrol with them, but to work with that group to be able to provide resources that we may not know about, to be able to help those chronic consumers that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. What changes do you want to see in Waco's current policing system?
When I first got here, when I, even during the selection process, when I came to Waco to visit Waco to learn more about Waco, to make sure that this was somewhere that I wanted to be as well, I noticed that there was a lot of support for our police officers. And even though we do have a lot of support, I want to make sure that we increase, that's one of my priorities, increase the number of positive interactions that we have with in all communities, specifically in communities of color, to make sure that we can start, in order to reverse some of the stereotypes that our Black and brown communities have about the police, and the police have about, these implicit biases that we have about, African American communities. And I say we, because we are represented by just, more than just me as an African American. We have to connect, and we have to contact, and we have to have positive interactions, and we have to just blow away some of these stereotypes by interacting and having a relationship with our community. So, so far, I've been out and about in the community. I want the kids to see me. I want the kids to know that this is something that they can do, and I want them to see know that police officers are not the only, what they see in TV are the negative stereotypes, that we're here to help, we're here to support, we're here to encourage, we're here to, to just do what we can to make sure that they're successful citizens and to prevent crime.
I like that. Some of my favorite videos I see online all the time are cops playing basketball with people and stuff like that. And it's every incident doesn't have to go negative, and there's definitely people on both sides that make it go out that way. But,
that's right. And one of the things that we're doing this weekend, we're having our first annual Back to School Bash, and it's going to be at the Tower. I mean, what better way than to connect with the community than to invite them into your home? So the Tower is our home, but it's the citizens' home too, because they pay the taxes. They are the police as well. So we're going to invite our citizens in our community out to the police tower from 10 to 2 next Saturday for a back to school bash. And we're going to give away backpacks and school supplies and have fun and have music and entertainment. It's going to be a dunking booth. I get to get dunked, and just have a good time with our kids in our communities, and let them know that we care about their success and want them to be successful in school. So I'm looking forward to that next weekend. And like I said, it's our first annual, and our community has been more than supportive in donating school supplies and backpacks. It's been an overwhelming response, and I'm really looking forward to it. So that's just one of the ways that we're going to do that.
No, I like that. I hope that keeps going. That's my first time hearing about it. So
yes.
I'm going to try to
I would definitely share the flyer with you. We got to push that out there, because we want, and we realize that we're kind of like in center of town, and and whatever we have left, we've already made plans to go out into communities and just start handing out backpacks, those that we have left, or going to those schools where we know kids may not come to school the first day with a backpack or pen or papers, and give them out to the principals and the teachers and the counselors and say, hey, you know better than we do who need this stuff. So, but we like to be a part of handing that out, so they know that, hey, this came from the police, So, we're looking forward to it.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. I didn't know about it until Dr. Peaches told us, because we have a back to school drive. Well, we have a giveaway the same day, and I was like, oh, I wish we would have known ahead of time, because it would have been something that we could have coordinated on, but we didn't know. And I told her we do it every year, and we're working with Transformation Waco to service Indian Spring and now Carver. So we kind of had to stay where we were, because that need was different than what y'all are doing anyway. So I'm just grateful that the kids have, not the kids, but the parents have options of where they can go, get resources and backpacks, because I know that that's something we struggle with. Like the year before last, we were out in 30 minutes, and we didn't know where to redirect them to. Wow. So it's really good that more people are doing these types of back-to-school events. So I'm grateful. And like you said, coming from the police department is something that's different for everybody.
Exactly. And so, hey, and if you guys are doing things that can help us build that police legitimacy and improve our relationships, invite us. If I'm available, if I'm not available, we'll have somebody else to come out just to represent us, because we need to increase those positive interactions. Yeah, and we can only do it through you guys.
That's something that we've talked with In Change Waco. We talked about within Change Waco is how do we instead of community policing, because that's something that the term does something to me, because I grew up in East Waco. So I'm always like, can y'all please stop saying it?
Yeah.
But we talked about community engagement, and like something that I told them that I would like to see is like the police department, talk to the people that live in those neighborhoods, the church leaders and different things like that, because that's the only way that there is going to be any trust built. Because the Black community and the Hispanic community in Waco don't trust the police. Like, no matter, even though we're doing this interview, they're still going to be like, oh, what y'all doing?
Yeah.
Right.
So I think like those different types of events, if y'all are present, then that will start to build the trust, because they see y'all in a different light and it's always not being stopped or arrested. So I think that that's something that's very important. Yeah. So we really, really appreciate that.
No, absolutely. And, you bring up the term community policing. Community policing is so different for me. So there's a term that I learned, a philosophy that I learned from my previous chief before I got here, called relational policing. And relational policing, the fundamental principles are building relationships, and not in order to perform community policing, which are problem solving activities and coordinating with the community to solve problems. You got to have a relationship. Mm-hmm. You have to build that trust. And relational policing, the tenets of relational policing are transparency, respect, engagement, which is, to me, is very, very key. Building that emotional capital and knowing, okay, they trust us, we trust them, and being accountable, making sure we're holding the officers accountable just as we hold the citizens accountable. And we feel like that transparency, respect, engagement, building that emotional capital and accountability will build trust. So the tenets spell out the words treat, with 2 E's, and we feel like all of those tenets leading up to that last T build trust. So I'm all about relational policing, love community policing, know what that is, but we can't do that without having relationships with our community.
Yeah, I totally agree.
This question was originally like a whole lot more color based. Like the person had asked 2 separate questions, but I kind of just merged it into one. Is there something that the regular everyday people can do to help the current climate of policing here in Waco?
Yeah, one of the things that I think we can do is join in on what we're doing. I mean, it's really surprising to me that when I mention some of the programs that we have with the police department, when I talk to our African American community and our Spanish community, they go, "We didn't know about that." And I'm like, what? Yeah. And so we have programs like our Citizens Police Academy. It's so important. I don't care how you feel about the police. And yes, most of them will be held at the tower. Most of the meetings are. Go in. It's a 12-week program, 3 hours once a week, where you learn about what we do at the police department. We talk about policy. We do the shoot, don't shoot. You do a ride along. SWAT comes out and tell you when and why they come out. Our family violence unit, our K9 unit. It's a lot of fun, but it's a learning activity and an opportunity for you to get a better understanding of why we make some of the decisions that we make as a police department. And we host several citizen police academies a year. We have one starting August the 19th. The last day to apply is August the 13th, and you can just go online to our website, and it says Citizen Police Academy. Click on it. The application is there. The last time we graduated a class, I had just gotten here, and there was one African-American female, and that was and I say about 15 that at least came to the graduation. We were just coming out of COVID. And that surprised me. And so I would love to see our communities get involved in our Citizens Police Academies. So you can ask those questions when those, and our team is before you, and then see why we make some of the decisions that we make, So that's one opportunity. And again, like I said earlier, if there are opportunities in the community that people are hosting events where we can use that as a positive engagement, and we can just, whether we show our face and put up a table, shake hands with the kids or hug the kids, take pictures, whatever, then let us know so that we can come out and be involved in those activities, so that we can start, that contact can start changing the perceptions and the relationship that we have.
I agree.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that. I was trying to process everything.
That is I didn't know until we started changing Waco a lot of the things that were on the police website. But it's just because there's nobody's telling anybody, especially people of color like this. Yeah. I can believe they don't know. I know they don't know
Yeah.
because I don't know.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, sometimes if we don't know something, we know that the rest of them don't know either.
That they don't know. Exactly.
Yeah, so
And
it's just say they don't know.
I thank you for this opportunity to be able to share that, and I share that every time that I can, to make sure that they do know and they are welcome to come and participate in these programs.
Awesome.
There's a lot of things that aren't transparent with people. I realized that when we were bringing up a bunch of like voting rights and trying to push people who are running elections and stuff like that. A lot of it's never easily accessible, or people don't know where to look. So I definitely didn't know about that, but that sounds cool.
Right.
Sounds cool.
CPA. I mean, we have our police explorers for our youth. Believe it or not, when I was growing up, you used to ask kids in first and second grade what they want to be. Police officers used to be a top thing. And now you don't hear it as much. And I've been to schools and I have heard kids say they still want to be a police officer, but now, they're either, if they do, they don't want to say it because, they hear so much negativity and negative stuff about police officers. But we have young people programs, the Junior Police Academy for 2 weeks in the summertime, where kids can come and do the same thing that adults do during the Citizens Police Academy, over a course of 2 weeks from 8 to 12. And then we introduce them not just to the local law enforcement, but, the Texas Rangers or DPS and, the county and just come together to learn more about law enforcement. And then, of course, the Explorer program is an ongoing program. And once they get involved in competitions and they, learn the strategies and tactics of policing. And then they go and compete against other Explorer programs from other police departments across the state of Texas. It's a lot of fun, but you don't see a lot of black and brown people participating. But I would love to have some of our kids to go and participate in these programs and to represent and to learn more about what we do. And then, of course, when you get ready to go in high school and get ready to go to college, you need volunteer hours. There are plenty of opportunities for our explorers to volunteer. We'll have our explorers out next Saturday for the back to school event. When they come from back to school, they get volunteer hours that they can apply for, when they apply for college, they can mention that. So the opportunities are there. And I would, if anybody's, they can reach me on the website, have questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would be glad to share that information.
Oh, thank you. That's it.
Okay. This question says, are there any laws still in place that you view as racist or discriminatory? And what are the city's plans in moving past these laws and correcting former mistakes? So
I saw that question, and do you guys have any that you know of? Because I don't have any that I knew of offhand. I've been here 5 months, and nothing has reared its ugly head. But I don't know.
I don't know any laws in particular. I just think that the thing in Waco is policy, not something that like the state says, oh, this is what you should do and you better do it. But I think like local policy, like a lot of the cite and release is really a big thing, especially within Change Waco. I know like cite and release and there being like a citizens advisory board and things like that. Those are things that we kind of came up with that we felt could be better. And like I said, community policing was the thing because it was brought up on one of the Zoom calls that we were on. And I told them, can y'all find another term? Like you said, relational policing sounds a whole lot better than community policing, because when I heard community policing, I told them it made me have flashbacks of like when we were growing up, we would be walking and we would like, sometimes my cousins would literally like be stopped. Where y'all going? We're walking to the store. We're like 10, 12 years old. So when people say that kind of triggered me because I felt like they were supposed to be like patrolling and they were policing us. And we weren't doing anything wrong with being children. Like, it's the summertime, we're out of school, we're walking around because that's what we're in the country. That's what kids do.
I didn't say that. You said we were in the country. And to me, those are just opportunities that are missed or that are lost. And reframing that question would change that whole thing. Hey, how you guys doing? Yeah. What's your name? Where y'all been? Where y'all headed to? I mean, and the way that could, just the disposition and reframe, that would have been totally different than sound like you being interrogated. Yeah. And if that's how you felt.
They knew our faces, and I think that's what made it worse. It's like we saw the same people all the time, and it was always the same thing. And it's like, y'all know we're not doing anything. Yeah. So, instead of taking the opportunity to build a relationship with us, which they very well could have, that's not what was happening. And like I said, I grew up in East Waco across the tracks. So during that time that we were growing up, there was always a lot of activity over there, but we weren't the ones making the activity be a thing. So it was just kind of a situation where we were constantly rubbed wrong. And I think that's kind of what made us be like, police coming again. Okay, here we go. You know? So I don't know any laws in particular that they could be referring to, but I do know like a lot of the cite and release is a big thing for a lot of people, because I think that they feel like a lot of the black men in Waco are jailed for things that they could have been, you know, given a warning for. So I think that's the biggest thing. But like you said, knowing the policies and how much marijuana somebody can have, because that's I think a lot of it has to do with people being arrested for drugs. And
drugs are still against the law. I don't want anybody thinking, I can have 4 ounces of drug. The chief said I can have 4 ounces. No, you cannot cite. I was using that as an example. But yeah, it's not a law and tell me it's not legal in Texas. So when you have any amount of drugs on you,
I think that's the biggest thing. And not even just them having the drugs, but the amount of prison time or jail time that they receive in exchange for, you know, the amount of drugs they have versus what maybe their white counterpart would receive. That's the biggest thing that people have an issue with within Waco. And it's the truth.
You know, that's the criminal justice system. So it's not just, they enter because we found them with it and we have to file the charges and put them in jail. But then once it gets to the courts level, I mean, that just means that we all need to sit around a table and talk about how, we can address that. And unfortunately, I don't have the information about how they are handling making sure that it's fair and consistent with punishment and discipline, punishment for crimes, or drug crimes. But historically, I mean, with the research and everything, that's what it shows. Yeah. It shows that, we always get the people in years for 30 years, going to jail for 30 years.
For some weed. But I think that's one of the biggest things is really like, that's what we talked about is like, the drug charges and the time that they receive in exchange versus with some, because I know Belmead is probably full of, it's not your jurisdiction, but like those people in Belmead that do meth and stuff, it's meth labs. I'm not being funny, but they go and they get out and then they're doing it again. And I think that's what people see is like, well, they're not being reprimanded, but somebody who's smoking something that people consider as healthier, they have weed, they get more time. Versus somebody's doing, selling or doing meth that can just wipe somebody out quickly. Right. They're not receiving as much time, and I think that's the larger issue. So, like you said, it's a roundtable discussion.
Yeah, because we need to get the DAs in here, we get the judges in there that makes those decisions, make those decisions. Coming in with the research to show that it's been disparities for years, and okay, how are we going to fix it? Right. How do we make it fair, kind of thing? So.
I think. I was on Instagram, I think this morning, and my cousin had sent me this link to where this new study found that, police officers aren't being as respectful to, black drivers as they are, people who aren't of color. Well, not really just black drivers, but people of color as they are, white drivers. And I was like, you don't really need a study for that. You can go talk to almost anybody, and they can probably point to a negative interaction that they've had with police. And I hate that. So I really appreciate you coming on here and mentioning, wanting to be more transparent and wanting to build more relationships, because I live in Hewitt. I don't live in Waco technically. And the last interaction that I had with a police officer in Hewitt was too good to me to be true, because I was in a rush to work and I had cut him off, and he was in an undercover car. He pulled me over, asked me what I was, speeding for. Stuff like that, just going through the motions, and then he let me go. I didn't get a ticket. I didn't, I guess it was a warning, stuff like that. But he verbally mentioned how I could have hit him trying to just, swerve over and, get on down the street. And it just really baffled me, because I was like, I'm not used to interactions like that where someone's being, respectful and I'm getting let go and I'm not getting pulled out the car, stuff like that. I'm not used to that.
But see, we don't hear about that. We have millions of contacts across. I'm talking about all 18,000 police officers across police agencies across this country. We have millions of contacts with citizens daily that go right, but those are not the ones that we're talking about, right? So that's not what sells. That's not what people are seeing. And I know that there are a lot of times I've watched videos of our police officers here on stuff that I just knew was going to go bad, and they were just phenomenal. So it requires a balance. But trust me, there are many, many, many more positive interactions than there are negative interactions. And I tell you, and I challenged our community to do this when I first got here. I was like, hey, we always hear about the bad interactions. When somebody does something extraordinary or does something well, tell me about those times too, and our officers like hearing that. When they hear it and it comes from me or it comes from the top, they're more apt to go out and continue to do it, right? I haven't had too many complaints since I've been here, but, inevitably, I know it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I know that everybody, don't come to work with a smile on their face every day or in a great mood, and every interaction is perfect. I realize that, but a lot of them are. So I encourage our citizens, when our officers do stuff well, just as when they do stuff bad, to just let us know.
I appreciate that. The last question I got submitted was, what does the current budget for the police department look like? I think this is the same person that kind of mentioned the grant. So they're like, are we going to see more like, facilities and like cop cars and stuff like that, or will it be more of a focus on like initiatives like the sighting release and stuff like that?
So the budget for the police department has not increased, and like I said, I explained the this Department of Justice process with hiring new officers, but our budget is currently like $43.6 million. 85% of our budget is for salaries and benefits. That other 15% are for supplies, equipment, training, and that type of thing. So there's really not a whole lot of room with what we do, but we have no plans of doing anything differently than we have in the past right now with the current budget. Every now and then we have to move stuff around, but we only have about 15% to move around because we have to pay our salaries and budgets. We have 267 sworn police personnel and 97 support personnel, so about 400 people. And all of that is included in our budget. So that is our budget. And again, if we get that $1.6 million in 4 years, it's because to pay the salaries of the officers that we receive from the Department of Justice. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think people are always under the impression that like, the police are loaded.
I know, right? I mean, we're the biggest department in the city, so we have the biggest budget, but we have the most people too. And salaries and benefits cost a lot, and it's not a secret. I'm sure it's on a city website or something what our money has been spent on, and 85% of it is salaries and budget. So we have 15% to manage, but 15% of $4.43 million is still a lot of money. But again, we need police cars. They break down. They get in a wrecks. Equipment and training, and so
Oh wow.
So, do you want to kind of explain this part?
Change Waco. Okay, so Change Waco was formed last year, right? Yeah. Time flies.
No, literally.
Change Waco was formed last year after I hate talking about it because it, like you said, people it's always a thing and we never hear about the good stuff. But after the George Floyd incident, Change Waco was formed. De'Viar and some of his friends put together a protest, and after that protest, some of us came together with our different organizations within Waco. The New Black Collective, Black Scent was born, and Immigrants Alliance. I'm trying to think of everybody's individual.
Like Pastor Jones.
Yeah, some of the pastors, and Kent McKeever with Greater Waco Legal Services. So it was just kind of a diverse group of us. We came together and we had conversations about every week on Zoom, and we were trying to figure out a way that we could service Waco, not just within the individual capacities of our organizations and our individual persons, but how we could come together as a coalition. So it is a coalition of I hate saying this word, so I'm going to say BIPOC like organizations and white allies. And it's addressing the criminal justice system within White McLennan County. And some of the things that we decided on would be our focus are the 5 things that Quavis told me to ask you about. We've already touched on the first one, to adopt a cite and release ordinance or policy. You said you were for that. Mm-hmm. So we've already established that. The second thing that we adopted was to establish a criminal justice committee on equity. And I guess that's kind of what you and I were touching on as far as like the drug offenses and talking to the DAs and the judges. And like he wanted to know if you were for or against all of these things. So you can feel free.
Absolutely. I mentioned let's get, as far as the criminal justice concerns are, we need to sit down and talk about that. But we need everybody around the table, not just police. Yeah. But the courts and judges and in corrections as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the misconceptions is that y'all can handle everything.
And we do everything.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the questions are geared toward the police department, right. But I don't think that sometimes people take into consideration that, like you said, y'all are a part of the puzzle. Y'all are not the whole piece. So once y'all file the charges, it's really out of y'all's hands. So I think that that's important for people to remember is like y'all are the starting of the process.
Yeah. Right. We do start the process.
Yeah. And I don't think that a lot of people know that.
I think that's why they get so attached to like hating the cops too, because they see y'all first and they're like, well, if y'all let me go, like, I wouldn't have to deal with all of this that happens next. Right. But it's also like a slippery slope, because if you don't do the stuff in the first place, you wouldn't have to deal with the cops in the second place. Right. But no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Establish a criminal justice committee. Okay.
Yes. You want to?
Okay, I do next. Yeah. The third one that they mentioned was create a citizen advisory board. Mm-hmm. So kind of like I'm just reading the thing. The civilian advisory board will give the public power to recommend departmental policies and procedures that can lead to systemic changes and investigate citizen complaints against the police department. So I guess like
that's the accountability aspect.
Trying to take it more out of like, not really take it out of y'all's hands, but kind of give y'all a helping hand to where it isn't just in-house people watching other in-house people, have, citizens on the outside who are dedicating time to make sure that, cops are being held accountable.
So I mentioned doing the interview process. We had a process in Houston, and I sat on one of the boards, and it was called Administrative Disciplinary Review Committee, where we had citizens, and we had another committee that was just citizens, the Independent Police Oversight Board, and they got to our serious cases of excessive use of force, or even if it was serious behavior off duty. They got to see all of those cases after they were investigated by IED, and they got to ask questions, and and we realized that they are not police officers, and they don't understand all policy, but policy was there for them to refer to once the discipline was recommended, and their whole goal was to look over the case, make sure it was in line with, because we have a disciplinary matrix to make sure that everybody was being treated fairly, and allow them an opportunity to say, well, yeah, this falls within the discipline, whether they should be terminated or whether they should get 5 days off or whatever, and to review those cases and to ask questions, if they think there was a I that wasn't dotted. Hey, why didn't y'all ask this question? Mm-hmm. Or I see that this happened at a club. Did we talk to the club on, or if we missed something? And so they became so familiar with the type of cases that we had that they were satisfied. We never had to go to this. Oh, we need a civilian review board with subpoena power, because we gave them what they needed. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really effective. And one way that we had representation from the community, and the community understood what we were doing, and they had, we could be able to say, we have community members that looked at these cases, like the non-serious violations, which we have more of those than anything else, like department policy, you forgot to turn on your body-worn camera, or something like that that's minor. They didn't have to look at those unless it was a part of the serious investigation. Then yes, then they saw all of that. So I am not opposed to having something like that. Like I said, I've worked with the Independent Police Officer Board and the Administrative Disciplinary Review Committee, which was actually a committee that was combined with community members and police officers of every rank. It wasn't just executive staff. There was a police officer, somebody from the union, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and then there were 4 community members sitting on the board as well. When we get ready to recommend discipline to the chief, all of them had a say in what that discipline should be, or to make that recommendation. The chief always had the final discipline, the final say, but they had input. And I think involving our communities and getting that buy-in, they see that we're not hiding anything, right? And of course, there's confidentiality. Those people that we select to participate, there's a level of confidentiality that's there, but it's people that, you know, hopefully that the community trusts and believes, okay, well, they have our best interests in mind. Right. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. We don't have a big IAD, an internal affairs division unit. We have a sergeant because we don't get that many IAD complaints that rise to the level. But if, you know, even if we had one that needed to meet once every other month or whatever, or when we got a case, if we didn't have cases, maybe, hey, call y'all in and say, hey, we got a big one that we need to sit down and talk about it. We want the community to know about it. So I really don't have a problem forming that. I just think that when people go in and say, we need a civilian review board, well, if you've never had any problems with us, why do we go in antagonistic and causing a relationship? Well, let's try this first and see if it works. Yeah. And if we're giving you what you need and you're seeing what you need to see, then there's no need to, you know, go all the way to the left, right? But anyway, so, yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it's Criminal Justice Advisory Board, even if it's not just ID cases, but just things that may be going on in the community that I may not see or that I may not, you know about, or that they may be able to help me to address. And, you know, and I don't want a board that just brings me problems. Yeah. Let's talk about some solutions, and let's talk about some of the good stuff too, and how we can increase police legitimacy and build better relationships and trust in our community.
I feel like the criminal justice one is something that Waco would definitely need more than, I'm not going to say more than, you know, a police oversight. I feel like just in like my, you know, circle and people that I've known and met and stuff like that, stuff's always seemed more contained and kind of more like, well, you know, they shouldn't have did that and stuff like that versus it actually being like a super major wrong, because compared to like the George Floyd case and Breonna Taylor, Waco hasn't had stuff like that happen. But like the criminal justice side of it, I do think that would be a major nice step, because I feel like that's where a lot of the things kind of go wrong in a sense. It's because a lot of people is under the impression that like Waco just arrest and put people in jail to kind of get more money from, like, you know, people who get in trouble. So, and that might, you know, it's a misconception.
That's why it's good to have those relationships and those kind of boards, because that's part of that engagement and building that emotional capital with our community, because we haven't had a George Floyd, thank God, and we haven't had a Breonna Taylor. But who's to say that one day something like that doesn't happen? Yeah. And if we've built that in engagement and emotional capital with our community members, and they know that we're transparent, they're more than likely to say, okay, give Chief Victoria and her team a chance to figure out what happened and take care, you know, and handle this, as opposed to, you know, things just blowing up. So building that emotional capital and that trust and that transparency ahead of time before something happens is very, very important. And I'm all about that. I'd love to build that emotional capital with our community, because God forbid something happens. Well, you know,
I think they look back to way back to Jesse Washington also, and think about the story of Jesse Washington. No, I'm hoping I don't miss anything, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you know, but Jesse Washington was this like young black man. I forget exactly how old he was, but he got in trouble here in Waco. I think they said, did he whistle?
He whistled at a white woman or something.
Yeah, they said he whistled at a white woman, and then they, you know, found him guilty and dragged him, you know, down the street and hung him, and like, you know, had it as like a big display for the whole city to see. And I feel like with that being something that did happen in Waco's past, a lot of people don't really move forward and kind of see that, you know, a lot of those people aren't here no more. They're not in charge. You know, a lot of things have changed. You know, we can't do stuff like that.
Right.
You know, stuff like that doesn't happen no more. So I feel like that might be something else that's also put in as a negative perception on Waco's police specifically, because when we were doing the protest last year and Hope came to me and was like, okay, so what is the point of the protest? Like, what are you trying to get done after the protest? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, we just wanted to, like, you know,
protesting?
Yeah. It's like people were, you know, protesting in Austin, and you know, we just wanted the George Floyd stuff to get taken care of the right way. So we were just trying to join the conversation. I didn't really have something actionable for us to do afterwards, and that's where Change Waco came in. Well, she was like, okay, we have this that we can use and turn people's attention to, and try to, you know, use that as the next conversation starter. So yeah, that I think that makes sense.
I'm glad that y'all took action after it was over, right? And formed a coalition to try to address some changes or prevent stuff from happening before it happens. And I had heard of that. That was one of the things before I got here. My sister sent me a book. It was a history, some kind of book. Yes. And so and you bring up a good point when you said that. It just made me think about something. So we paint people with these broad brushes, right? So back in during civil, I know you guys, but y'all know your history. During the civil rights movement, when police officers were enforcing Jim Crow laws, that's part of the problem, right? Yeah. Even today, and even some young people don't understand why they don't trust the police. But from generations, it's been passed down. We don't trust the police. Yeah. We don't do it, right? But it was because police officers were enforcing those rules. Those were laws on the books that they were enforcing, you know, Bloody Sunday and all this stuff that happened in our history. And then on the flip side of that, we get young officers that say, but that wasn't me. I didn't do that. And what I try to instill in them is that, yeah, it wasn't you, but the fact that we put on this uniform every day, every time they see that uniform, that's what they're seeing. Yeah. So it's up to us to extend that olive branch and make that difference in our community, increase those positive interactions to say, hey, we're going in a different direction. This is not what we're doing, right? So that I thought about that when you said that, because we do that, and then I suffer with it on my end because the officers are like, but it wasn't me. I wasn't there. Well, yeah, and it's the same thing as, you know, when our officers get into a foot chase and they're running and people are running after them and they take it so personal. I can't believe they ran from me. They didn't run from you. They don't know you. They ran from the police. And you're in this uniform. Mm-hmm. They don't know you're a Sunday school teacher and a coach. They don't know that. They just know that during the day and right now at this moment, you were, you know, you were a police officer. So, it kind of goes both ways. So.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the Jesse Washington incident was that there was never an apology, and people had to live with that trauma because Waco is a small town, and a lot of people, that was their family. And so the biggest problem, like I said, is that there was never an apology, and no one has ever really just outright addressed it. No. And I think that if there was a conversation, like an open conversation, we know what happened, that this is how we're going to move forward, things could be not that they could be fixed, but they could be better. Because just that one thing, like that one incident, shapes the entire thought process of a lot of Black Wacoans, and that's what they bring it up. They're gonna bring it up because, like I said, there was never an apology. Nobody has ever just said, okay, well, that was wrong. That shouldn't have happened. There's never been a conversation about it. And I feel like until there's a conversation, there's always going to be that stigma. Well, they did that, they'll still do it, because that's how a lot of people feel. And he wasn't the only person that happened to. I think the other man's name was St. Majors. So there was like that person, and there was another person. So it happened more than once. And it was like a repeat offense for the Black community in Waco. And even if they were guilty, it's like, jail them. Don't do that and leave us to see it. Because that was horrific.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, that was like, I saw the pictures and I was like, whoa.
Me too. It was just difficult for me to even, I couldn't even stare at it. I just saw it and went,
they had him in Town Square. And I think that's why a lot of Black people don't come downtown, and they don't talk about it, but that's why they don't come downtown, because that's where that happened. And my grandmother, like my mom's mom, God rest her soul, she taught, that's how I didn't learn about Jesse Washington from school or anything. She told me.
So she remembered.
She told me. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's being passed down from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, okay, well, I'm scared to go here. I'm scared to go there. Like, us never going really outside of East Waco or North Waco because we didn't feel welcome in other communities, things like that. And just understanding, like, Waco used to be a sundown town. We don't know when it stopped. Yeah. So for us, it's like we stay on our side of town. Y'all stay on y'all side. And that's really how it was even when I was growing up. And I'm just about to be 30 in October. So I'm not that old. And it's just like, it's that current, that recent. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of history, even with the gentrification happening in East Waco. That's hard for us as well, because like y'all didn't want to send y'all side of town and y'all wouldn't come over here, and now you're coming and you're buying it. And we have to sit and watch everything that we've built, everything that we cherish, dwindle away, and it's changing before our eyes.
So this is a much bigger issue.
It's a lot.
It's just police. This is
but everything goes back to the police, and I'm like, well, it's a lot deeper than that. And I don't think a lot of people have. I tell everybody, and I don't mean any harm when I say this, but the general public is not as educated as we would like to believe. So their comprehension of what is happening is not going to be what we see at all. And there's a lot of ignorance, and they really don't know. And it's not to be ugly or anything, but it's the truth. They really don't understand. And no matter what you say, what I say, what De'Viar says, sometimes there's just some people that just won't get it. And it's always going to be whatever they were taught that's ingrained in their brain. Yeah, that's what they believe, and that's their reality and their truth. And so for the people we can't help, we have these conversations because it's just like, we can only have the conversations to try to help. But I tell people all the time, if you're not going to be a part of the conversation, and even if you don't decide to come to the conversation and talk, if you're not going to be a part of the solution, then you don't need to say anything.
Then I don't want you to say anything. I'm with you. I'm with you. Be the change that you want to see. Don't just complain. And then you come to me with some solutions, What would you like to see different? I'm with you. I get it.
So I think it was big for us, and you becoming a police chief, like that was big for us. I think I cried because I was like, oh wow, this is never, like I never ever imagined that, especially not a Black woman.
Super amazing. Yeah.
So it was like a double minority for me, and my brain was like, oh wow, like this really just happened. And I didn't really know how to take it, because what we've always seen, there was always people of power, they were always white. Like the people of power in Waco have always been white. It's always been the same families. It's always been the same thing for us. And so now that Waco is kind of on this pivot, it's a lot. Like I'm like, okay, it's
really jarring. But it's jarring, but exciting. It's really nice to see.
And I can only imagine. I just and when I applied to Waco, I didn't look to see, I'm gonna be the first Black female. My primary concern was that I was qualified. That I could do the job, because the last thing I wanted other communities to say, well, she got it because she's Black. Or she got it because she was a female. Well, I want you to say that, but she's a qualified Black female.
You know
what I'm saying? she put in the work. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. Yeah. She's the best person for the job.
I remember the swearing, and they kind of went in, over everything that you had done in Houston. I was like, okay, I'm excited. I'm excited to get it.
And it was I said she has the credentials, so they can't say anything. Yeah. And even when y'all were in the interview process, like that was crazy for me, because I was looking at all of the candidates and I was like, this is a nightmare. Like some of those people, we were like, please don't.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yes. So it was like, please don't, because I just was like, okay, here we go again. And that's how it felt. And so we talked amongst ourselves and Change Waco, and we were like, okay, so what do y'all think about this person or that person? And it was scary. I'm not gonna lie, it was very scary. But I appreciate that the city took their time.
Yeah,
because that was important to us. Because at first it did feel kind of rushed, and I was like, I don't know.
Kind of just happened. I remember meeting the former, I guess, police chief. Was it Holt?
Ryan Holt.
Yeah, I remember meeting him, and he was telling us how he was stepping out to become the assistant city manager. But he was like kind of the city assistant manager, but they were still going through the interview process. Right. So he was still kind of police chief too, and it was just a weird process to me. But it was super major when you got announced that you be coming in and taking the position, and not to I don't even know if to say this, but like not to bring in like, you know, skin color into it. But when I first heard it, I was like, okay, it's gonna be some like light skinned lady, because like, you know, like this is a whole nother conversation. But like people of darker skin colors always kind of get like more discriminated against, and kind of get overlooked in favor of people who are lighter skinned. So I was like, we're not gonna get like, you know, someone who's actually of color to be like a mixed lady or something like that. And then no, you're like a brown skin, darker skinned black lady. And I was like, okay, that's dope. Like I love it. Like I'm really excited to see it. I'm really happy that they chose you.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. I mean, and I've been welcomed by all of our community so far. Yeah, and I know there's some naysayers, and I know there's some haters out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But for the most part, man, I've been welcomed by every culture in this city, and it has just been a phenomenal opportunity. I'm trying to get my family here because we're having a great time.
Okay, we have, Mike said we got to wrap it up. Okay. We have two more things to change Waco. So the fourth one says to support and enhance mental health services within the community, which we've talked about already, so we don't have to go back to that. Yes. And the last one is support the logistics of developing and implementing a bail fund in McLennan County. So a group of community members who will be part of Change Waco's work have researched how to start a bail fund to reduce the harm of bail practices in our county. So I guess this is for people who may not be able to afford bail or, you know, bails, but they're not always the best people. So I guess that's for those people, and so that they're still treated fairly.
As long as they're being treated fairly and consistently. Again, once it makes it past our charges, we have nothing to do with that. But it's fair and consistent and equitable across our community. Then I don't see why I wouldn't support something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't make that decision. But if it's providing an opportunity for people of color to be treated fairly, absolutely.
Awesome.
Do you have like a email that we could submit any other questions to that people might, you know, give us from the live and stuff like that?
Sure. My email address is Cheryl, SHERYLV @wacotx.gov, Gov.
That's easy.
Cheryl V. And if you can't remember that, you can go to the website, and there's when it has the chief of police at the bottom and it says email, you click it and the email comes directly to me.
And she responds, guys.
And I respond.
Yeah. She does respond. I think you have any more questions?
No. Oh wait, I do want to go on record to say this real quick, just to backtrack a little bit. But they did do some type of apology.
They did.
When Miss Commissioner Pat Miller took me and the rest of Blackson to the courthouse and showed us like, you know, where she sits at and all this kind of stuff. She gave us a little tour of the courthouse, and they have this like little paper that's like, not a little paper, but it's a piece of paper and it's framed in like this display. And I can't remember. I think it is an official apology because she went into how long it took. Like she was like, it took like
they were
10,
supposed to be
15.
building a memorial.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that thing. See, it took so long. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be building a memorial somewhere in town square, but I wasn't sure if that was a go. That's why I said that there was never anything official.
The paper was like old. It was like, you could tell that, you know, it was all yellow and stuff like that. And she was like, she went into how long it took for them to, you know, officially acknowledge it. Yeah. She was like, it took them a long time to even get this paper, but there's not a big citywide apology. Like one of the things that when we talked about with Blackson was like, we try to get them to do like a Jesse Washington statue or something like that to kind of like, you know,
there's supposed to be a memorial in the works, but I don't know what happened with that. But they were supposed to be working on it, but it still ain't an apology.
Yeah. There's nothing, you know, big and, you know, apologetic. We tried to get like a Black Lives Matter mural on the street like they do in Austin and PV. I saw the Austin one this past week. And we couldn't even do that. They were like, there's no city, you know, thing put in place for us to do that. And I'm like, well, can we look at the other cities who have done it and just copy them? Yeah, exactly. And it was like pulling teeth. It was really strange. But I just wanted to say that there is a little piece of paper that, you know, so that acknowledges it, and, you know, they're supposed to be working on a memorial, but, you know, the stuff gets said and then kind of quiet sound. But thank you.
Well, hey, ask about it. Y'all asking what we can do. Ask about it.
Got you.
Squeaky wheel gets the arm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Well, we thank you so much for coming to chat with us.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and congratulations again on your 1-year anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for welcoming here. It's been a great time.
Of course. As always, Stories of the Streets is sponsored by Black Scent, the New Black Collective, Change Waco, and Rogue Media.
You can follow us on Instagram. It's Stories of the Streets _ on Facebook. It's Stories of the Streets. We are all on all streaming platforms. It's Stories of the Streets, and you can reach us at storiesofthestreets@gmail.com.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.